How a group of escaped slaves killed every last master who owned them. They say that on one stormy night in 1859, 5 runaways vanished into the woods: Isaac, Martha, Jonas, Elias, and young Nate. Folks whisper that they weren't just fleeing the Harrow plantation. They were running from a death sentence their masters had already signed for them. But when the overseer tracked them down to kill them quietly, everything changed. Isaac, silent, sharp, dangerous in ways his masters never saw, made a choice that turned fear into fire. Together, the 5 slipped back through the rain into the very homes where they once bowed their heads. And they did what no one believed enslaved people would ever dare. By sunrise, every master who owned them was gone. And that's only the beginning of the legend. Because once the Harrow family fell, the whole county came hunting. But here's the part people still argue about today. Did they kill for freedom? Or did freedom rise only after the killing was done? Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The rain came down like fingernails drumming against the wooden roof. Isaac lay on his thin mattress, eyes open in the dark, listening. The quarters smelled of sweat and damp wood. Bodies shifted in sleep around him. Someone coughed. A child whimpered. Then he heard the voices. 2 men stood just outside the window. Their words slurred together, thick with whiskey. Isaac recognized them immediately. Overseer Cray and his younger brother, Duncan. They laughed about something. The sound made Isaac's jaw tighten. "Master says they go at sunrise," Cray said, his voice carrying over the rain. "All 5 of them." "Which ones?" Duncan asked. "The big field hand, the carpenter, that quiet one who works in the house, the boy, and the widow woman." Isaac's heart stopped. He knew those descriptions. Jonas, Elias, himself, Nate, Martha. Gambling debts again? Duncan's laugh was cruel. "Old Harrow can't keep his hands off the cards. Don't matter why," Cray said. "Buyers coming from Charleston, paying top dollar for strongbacks. They'll be gone before noon." Their footsteps faded into the rain. Isaac lay perfectly still. His mind raced. Sold. Separated. Sent to plantations where they would die as strangers. He had seen it happen before. Families torn apart like paper. Children screaming for mothers they would never see again. He sat up slowly. His hands trembled. Isaac moved through the dark quarters like a shadow. He touched Martha's shoulder first. She woke instantly, eyes wide. He pressed a finger to his lips. She understood. Years of slavery taught you to stay silent when danger came. He woke Jonas next. The massive man barely fit on his sleeping mat. His back carried scars that looked like tree roots spreading across dark soil. Jonas blinked once and sat up without a sound. Elias slept in the corner. The carpenter always kept to himself. Isaac shook his arm gently. Elias grabbed Isaac's wrist in an iron grip, then relaxed when he recognized him. Nate was the hardest. The boy slept deep. Isaac had to cover his mouth when he shook him awake. Nate's eyes went wild with fear until he saw the others gathered close. They huddled together in the farthest corner. Rain pounded the roof. Thunder rumbled somewhere far away. "They're selling us," Isaac whispered. "Sunrise, all 5. Martha's face went hard as stone. Jonas closed his eyes. Elias stared at his hands. Nate looked like he might be sick. "We run," Nate said immediately. "We have to run." "Run where?" Martha's voice was sharp and low. "You think they won't hunt us? You think they won't catch us and make examples?" "Better than being sold south," Nate shot back. "You don't know that," Martha said. Her eyes glistened in the dark. "You don't know what happens when they catch you." Silence fell between them. Isaac watched Martha's face. He knew her story. Everyone in the quarters knew it. "Tell them," Isaac said quietly. Martha looked away. Her hands clenched into fists on her lap. I ran once, 3 years ago. I had a baby, not even walking yet. I thought I could carry her far enough, thought I could find freedom for both of us. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard. They caught me in 2 days, brought me back in chains. They took my baby, sold her before my eyes, said it was punishment for thinking I had the right to leave. Jonas reached out and placed one massive hand on Martha's shoulder. She leaned into the touch. I haven't seen her since, Martha whispered. Don't even know if she's alive. But they made sure I understood. You don't run from Harrow Plantation. You don't get away. Nate's face had gone pale. Elias looked down at his worn hands. Then we die here, Elias said. Sold or killed for trying, those are our choices. No. Isaac's voice cut through the darkness. We choose a third way. We leave tonight. Right now. We don't wait for them to chain us in the morning. They'll come after us, Jonas said. His voice was deep and slow, like distant thunder. Let them, Isaac said. At least we'll have tried. At least we won't have accepted it. Martha studied his face. She nodded once. I'd rather die running than live sold. Elias stood up. He moved to a loose floorboard near his sleeping mat. The others watched as he pried it up with his fingernails. From underneath, he pulled out a small cloth bundle. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside were tools, a set of thin metal picks, a knife no longer than a man's palm, a coiled length of rope, thin but strong. I've been making these, Elias said, for 2 years. Thought I might need them someday. Nate's eyes went wide. You made lock picks? I make things, Elias said simply. That's what I do. Isaac took the knife. The handle felt rough against his palm. It was real, solid, a thing that could cut through more than wood. They moved together toward the door. Outside, the rain had grown heavier. The storm would cover their sounds. Jonas reached the door first. His hands gripped the frame. The back gate, Isaac whispered. Jonas, can you break the latch? Jonas nodded. If the storm's loud enough. They waited. Thunder rolled across the sky. When the next boom came, Jonas threw his full weight against the door. The wood splintered. The sound vanished into the storm. They slipped outside one by one. The rain soaked them instantly. Isaac led them along the edge of the quarters, staying low. Lanterns swung in the distance, patrols making their rounds, but the rain made everything harder to see. They passed the overseer's cabin. Snoring drifted through the walls. They passed the stables. Horses shifted in the dark. They kept moving. The back gate stood before them. A simple latch held it closed. Jonas gripped the metal bar with both hands. Lightning flashed. In that brief light, Isaac saw the determination on Jonas's face. Thunder crashed. Jonas yanked. The latch snapped like a dry branch. They ran. The woods swallowed them whole. Trees rose up like black walls. Rain turned the ground to mud. They stumbled and caught each other. Nate nearly fell. Martha grabbed his arm. They ran until their lungs burned. They ran until the plantation lights disappeared behind them. They ran until the world became nothing but darkness and rain and the sound of their own breathing. Finally, Isaac stopped them. They stood beneath towering pines. The branches overhead blocked some of the rain. Not much, but enough. They collapsed against the tree trunks, chests heaving, clothes soaked through, alive. Thunder rolled across the sky again. Isaac looked at the others. Martha, Jonas, Elias, Nate. 5 people who had chosen the impossible. We walk until the sun rises, Isaac said softly. The rain continued to fall. The pre-dawn world was gray and wet. The rain had softened to a steady drizzle. Mud sucked at their feet with every step. Isaac led them along an old service road that wound through the woods, a path used for hauling timber years ago, now mostly forgotten. Their clothes clung to their skin. Water dripped from their hair. Nate shivered. Martha walked with her arms wrapped around herself. Jonas moved like a tired giant, each footstep deliberate and heavy. Elias stayed near the back, eyes scanning the trees. Isaac tried to calculate their distance. 2 miles from the plantation? 3? Not far enough. Never far enough. But they needed to keep moving. The storm was ending. Dawn would bring light. Light would bring hunters. "How far do we go?" Nate asked. His voice was small. "Until we can't anymore," Isaac said. "And then what?" Isaac had no answer. He kept walking. The woods grew thicker. Oak trees pressed close on both sides. Undergrowth tangled around their ankles. The service road narrowed to barely a path. Isaac wondered if they should leave it, cut deeper into the forest where horses couldn't follow. Then Jonas stopped. The big man held up one hand. Everyone froze. Isaac's heart kicked against his ribs. "What is it?" Martha whispered. Jonas tilted his head, listening. "Something's moving. Through the brush." They stood perfectly still. Rain pattered against leaves. Somewhere, a branch cracked. Isaac strained to hear. There, the sound of something large pushing through vegetation. Not an animal. Animals moved differently. A horse. "Run," Isaac said. "Wait," Jonas pointed. "Just one rider." Listen. He was right. Only one set of hoofbeats. One rider moving slowly, carefully. Isaac's mind raced. A patrol would send multiple riders. A search party would come with dogs and torches. But one man alone, in the dark, before dawn. Understanding hit him like cold water. "He's not here to bring us back," Isaac said quietly. Martha's eyes widened. "What?" "Think about it. They're selling us at sunrise. If we escape, Master Harrow loses the sale. But if we die trying to run—" Isaac's voice went flat. "He collects insurance. 5 dead slaves is worth more than 5 missing ones." Elias cursed under his breath. "They sent someone to kill us." The hoofbeats grew louder. A lantern light bobbed between the trees. Isaac recognized the silhouette immediately. Broad-shouldered, cocky posture. Overseer Cray. Of course it was Cray. The man who enjoyed hurting people. The man who smiled when he swung the whip. He would volunteer for this. He would relish it. "Get off the road," Isaac hissed. They scattered into the underbrush. Isaac crouched behind a fallen log. Martha pressed herself against a tree trunk. Jonas melted into shadows despite his size. Nate and Elias ducked low behind thick ferns. Cray rode into view. His horse picked its way carefully along the muddy road. The lantern swung from his saddle. He held a rifle across his lap. Rain dripped from the brim of his hat. He was humming. Actually humming. "I know you're out here," Cray called out. His voice carried that familiar mocking tone. "Heard you running like scared rabbits. Mud's all torn up. You ain't clever." He stopped his horse in the middle of the road. The lantern light made his face look demonic. "Master Harrow wants you back," Cray continued. He was lying. Isaac could hear it in his voice. "Says if you come peaceful, there won't be punishment. Just a regular sale. Clean and simple." No one moved. No one breathed. Cray's smile faded. "Or we can do this the hard way." He raised the rifle to his shoulder, aimed it at the tree line. "At nothing, at everything. Come out now, and I'll make it quick," Cray said. "Otherwise, I shoot wild. Maybe I hit someone. Maybe they suffer. Your choice." Isaac's hand found the knife in his pocket. The blade Elias had made. It felt too small. Useless against a rifle. Against a mounted man with a lantern and hate in his heart. Cray cocked the rifle. The click was horribly loud. Then Nate moved. The boy rose from the ferns, arm already swinging. A rock flew through the air. It struck the horse's flank with a solid thump. The animal screamed and reared. Cray grabbed for the reins, cursing. The rifle went off. The shot went high, tearing through leaves. The horse spun. Cray fought to stay mounted. Jonas burst from the shadows. He moved faster than anything that big should move. 3 long strides and he reached the horse. His massive hands grabbed Cray's coat and yanked. Cray came out of the saddle like a sack of grain. The rifle fell. The horse bolted into the woods. Jonas slammed Cray against a tree trunk. The impact drove the air from Cray's lungs. He gasped and clawed at Jonas's hands, but Jonas was stronger. Years in the fields had built muscle like iron. "You were going to kill us," Jonas said. His voice shook. "All of us." Cray's hand went to his belt. A pistol. He drew it and fired point blank. The shot went wide, barely missing Martha. She screamed. Elias rushed forward. They were all moving now. A tangle of bodies and desperation. Cray fought like a cornered animal. His fist connected with Jonas's jaw. Jonas stumbled. Cray kicked free and scrambled for the rifle in the mud. Isaac ran. The knife was in his hand before he realized he'd drawn it. Cray's fingers closed around the rifle. He swung it up. Isaac crashed into him. They went down in the mud. Cray's elbow smashed into Isaac's ribs. Pain exploded through his chest. He couldn't breathe. Cray rolled on top of him, hands going for his throat. Then the knife was between them. Isaac didn't remember thrusting it forward, didn't remember the moment of resistance and then the horrible ease as it slid between ribs. He only remembered Cray's eyes going wide, the way his mouth opened, the wet, choking sound he made. Cray fell sideways. Blood spread across his shirt, black in the dim light. His hands scrabbled at the wound, his boots kicked at the mud. Then he was still. Isaac stared at the body, at his own hands, at the knife still clutched in his fingers. The others stood frozen. Rain fell. The lantern lay on its side, still burning, casting strange shadows across everything. Martha's voice came from somewhere far away. "We can't go back now." Isaac looked up at her, at Jonas, whose hands were shaking, at Elias, whose face had gone pale, at Nate, who was crying silently. "Grab him," Isaac said. His voice sounded like someone else's. "We need to hide the body." They moved like people in a dream. Jonas took Cray's shoulders. Isaac and Elias each grabbed a leg. Martha retrieved the lantern. Nate followed, stumbling. They dragged Cray deeper into the woods, off the road, past thick underbrush, to a place where fallen trees created a natural hollow. They laid him in the depression, covered him with branches, scattered leaves over everything. When they finished, they sat in a rough circle. No one spoke. The lantern burned between them. Rain dripped from the trees. Isaac stared at his hands. Cray's blood mixed with mud on his palms. He had killed a man, taken a life, crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. But Cray had been sent to murder them, to shoot them down like animals, to collect money for their deaths. Isaac raised his head, looked at each person in turn. Martha, who had lost her child. Jonas, whose back carried scars from men like Cray. Elias, who had built the tools of his own suffering. Nate, who had never known anything but chains. "If they want us dead no matter what," Isaac whispered, "then we decide how this ends." A few moments passed. The rain kept falling. The lantern's flame wavered in the damp air. Isaac stood first. His legs felt unsteady. The knife was still in his hand. He wiped the blade on wet leaves and tucked it back into his pocket. "We can't stay here," he said. "Where do we go?" Martha asked. She hadn't moved from where she sat. Her dress was soaked through, clinging to her thin frame. Isaac looked back through the trees, toward the plantation, the direction they'd fled from, the direction that should terrify them. "Back," he said quietly. Everyone stared at him. "You've lost your mind," Elias said. "They'll hang us. They'll hang us anyway." Isaac's voice was steady now, clear. "Cray was supposed to kill us. When he doesn't report back, they'll know something happened. They'll send more men. We can't outrun that. Not with no food, no weapons, nothing. So we just walk back and surrender? Jonas's voice was thick with disbelief. No. Isaac met his eyes. We go back because they won't expect it. Because right now, everyone thinks we're running north. Because the storm is still raging and the roads are empty. Because if we're going to die anyway, I want to see what they kept from us. What are you talking about? Martha asked. Knowledge. Isaac pointed back toward the plantation. Master Harrow keeps records, ledgers, documents about who owns what, who owes what. If we're truly marked for death, I want to know why. I want to know what we were worth to them. Nate wiped his eyes. That's crazy. Maybe. Isaac looked at each of them in turn. But so is everything else we've done tonight. And if there's food in that house, weapons, anything we can use, don't we deserve to take it? Silence. Then Martha stood. Her jaw was set. I want to see my name, she said. I want to see what they wrote about my baby. About taking her from me. Jonas rose next. Then Elias. Finally, Nate. They moved through the forest like ghosts, keeping low, avoiding open ground. The storm masked their footsteps. Lightning occasionally lit the sky, turning the world white for brief seconds. The plantation appeared through the trees, dark buildings against darker sky, no lights burning. Everyone would be asleep, or drunk, or both. Isaac led them around the back, past the slave quarters. He could see the small building where they'd lived, where they'd slept on hard floors, where they'd whispered about freedom in the dark. The main house loomed ahead. White columns, wide porch. A monument to wealth built on suffering. Cellar door, Elias whispered. He pointed to a slanted wooden entrance near the foundation. I fixed the hinge last month. It doesn't latch properly. They crossed the open ground quickly. Isaac's heart hammered. Every shadow looked like a guard. Every sound might be dogs, but nothing moved. The storm had driven everyone inside. Elias grabbed the cellar door handle and pulled. It opened with barely a sound. They descended crude stone steps into darkness. The smell of damp earth and stored vegetables filled the air. Isaac retrieved the lantern from his coat. Its light revealed barrels, crates, shelves of preserved food. A small fortune in goods, while people starved in the quarters. Take what you can carry, Isaac said, quietly. Martha found a sack and filled it with apples, dried meat, a loaf of bread. Jonas grabbed a jar of preserves. Nate found a wool blanket and wrapped it around his shoulders. Stone steps led upward to a door. Isaac tried the handle. Unlocked. It opened into the kitchen. Cast iron pots hung from hooks. A massive hearth dominated one wall. Everything spotlessly clean. They moved through the house like thieves, which they were now. Thieves and murderers. The words sat heavy in Isaac's mind. The hall stretched before them. Fine paintings on the walls, expensive carpet beneath their muddy feet. Isaac had cleaned this hall 100 times, had walked it with his head down, invisible. Now he walked it with purpose. Master Harrow's office door was closed, but not locked. Isaac pushed it open. The room smelled of tobacco and old paper. A massive desk dominated the space. Bookshelves lined the walls. A portrait of Alden Harrow hung above the fireplace, looking stern and dignified. Isaac wanted to spit on it. Help me search, he said. They rifled through drawers, found letters, contracts, bills of sale. Jonas discovered a pistol in the bottom drawer, already loaded. He held it like it might bite him. Elias found the metal box under the desk, locked, heavy. He pulled out his tools and went to work on the mechanism. His hands moved with the precision of someone who understood how things fit together. The lock clicked. Elias lifted the lid. Inside lay a thick leather-bound ledger. Isaac pulled it out and opened it. The pages were covered in neat handwriting, columns of numbers, names, dates. He began to read. The Harrow family owned 4 plantations across the county, each one listed, each one with detailed records of every enslaved person. Births, deaths, sales, purchases. People reduced to inventory. Isaac found his own name. Male, age 34, field hand, literate, dangerous. Value, $1,200. Martha's name. Female, age 28, house servant, one child, sold. Value, $900. Jonas, male, age 40, field hand, exceptional strength. Value, $1,400. The list went on, page after page. Dozens of names. Some Isaac recognized, many he didn't. All of them owned by various Harrow family members, brothers, cousins, uncles. They're all connected, Isaac said. His voice shook. Every plantation, every master, one family. Martha looked over his shoulder. Her finger traced the line where her daughter's name appeared. Sold to Montgomery Harrow, Riverside Plantation. That's only 10 miles from here, she whispered. Isaac kept reading. The ledger contained more than names. It showed debts between family members, gambling losses, business partnerships. The entire structure of their empire laid bare. And there, in a section labeled Future Sales, were 5 names scheduled for tomorrow morning. Isaac, Martha, Jonas, Nate, Elias. Reason for sale. Emergency liquidation of assets. Assets, Jonas said. The word came out like poison. Isaac's hands tightened on the ledger. His mind raced. They'd been running from one plantation, one master. But this showed the truth. The Harrow family was everywhere, controlling everything, owning everyone. You couldn't escape an empire. Not by running, not by hiding. He looked up at the others. Their faces showed the same realization, the same rage building behind their eyes. We thought we were running from Master Alden, Isaac said slowly. But he's just one piece. His brothers own the plantation to the east. His cousin owns 2 more to the south. They all profit together. They all decide together. They all own us together. Martha finished. Isaac set the ledger on the desk, looked at each person in turn, saw the same thought forming behind their eyes. The storm will last until morning, he said. Roads are flooded. No one's traveling. Each plantation will be isolated, unprepared. What are you saying? Elias asked, but his voice suggested he already knew. Isaac walked to the cabinet against the wall, opened it. Inside were more weapons, a rifle, 2 pistols, a hunting knife. He began removing them, laying them on the desk. I'm saying the Harrow family co-owns us all, Isaac said. They profit from our suffering as a group. They built an empire on our backs together. He picked up the rifle, checked that it was loaded. So tonight, while they're separated and blind, we end them all. Thunder crashed outside. The house shook. Martha stepped forward and took one of the pistols. Her hands didn't shake. Jonas lifted the axe that had been leaning in the corner, the same axe he'd used to split wood for Harrow fires. Elias grabbed the kitchen cleaver they'd passed earlier. Its blade caught the lamplight. Nate took the hunting knife. He was still crying, but his jaw was set firm. Isaac handed the ledger to Martha. Every address is in here, every master. We split up. We move fast. We finish this before dawn. This is murder, Nate whispered. They murdered us first, Martha said. Just slower. Over years instead of minutes. Isaac looked at the portrait above the fireplace, at Alden Harrow's painted face, at the symbol of everything that had crushed them. Tonight, Isaac said, his voice carrying the weight of every lash, every chain, every stolen child and broken family, the line ends. The kitchen became their war room. Isaac spread the ledger across the wooden table, his finger tracing the map drawn inside the back cover. 3 properties clustered within 5 miles, close enough to reach before dawn if they moved fast. Montgomery Harrow, Isaac said, pointing to the first location. Brother to Alden. 2 miles northeast. He has 6 slaves and 1 overseer. Martha leaned closer. Her finger touched the name listed beneath Montgomery's property. That's where they took my daughter. Isaac nodded. We start there. The second property belonged to Silas Harrow, a cousin who managed a smaller operation to the south. The third was owned by Thomas Harrow, another brother, who kept a breeding farm east of the main plantation. 3 households, Jonas said. Before sunrise. The storm will hide us, Isaac said. Each property will think they're safe. Isolated. They won't expect anyone to travel in this weather. Elias gathered rope from the cellar. I can disable their horses, cut saddles, make sure nobody rides for help. Good, Isaac said. He looked at each of them. We move fast, we stay quiet, we finish what we came to do, and we leave no witnesses who can organize pursuit. Nate's hands trembled as he gripped the knife. How do we… what if there are others there? People like us? We free them, Martha said firmly. Anyone in chains gets offered a choice. Run with us or scatter into the night. Either way, they deserve to know the masters are gone. Isaac checked the pistol at his belt. The weight felt wrong, foreign, but necessary. They left through the kitchen door, moving back into the storm. The rain had intensified. Water ran in streams down the road. Lightning turned the world white every few seconds, followed by thunder that shook the ground. The first property appeared through the trees after 20 minutes of hard walking, smaller than the main Harrow plantation. A modest house with a barn and 3 small outbuildings for the enslaved. No lights burned. The storm had driven everyone inside. Isaac led them to the barn first. Elias went to work on the horses while the others approached the house. 6 horses total. Elias cut through saddle straps with his knife, working methodically. He scattered grain across the floor to keep the animals calm and distracted. The main house had a back entrance. Jonas tested it. Unlocked. People didn't lock doors out here. Why would they? Who would dare enter a master's home? They stepped inside. A hallway led past a kitchen similar to the one they'd just left. Voices came from upstairs. Laughter. Someone was still awake despite the late hour. Isaac climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked under his weight. The laughter continued. 2 men drinking. Their words slurred. The door to the study stood open. Montgomery Harrow sat in a leather chair, a bottle of whiskey on the table beside him. The overseer, a thin man with a scarred face, occupied the other chair. Both men looked up as Isaac entered. Montgomery's hand moved toward a pistol on the desk. Jonas crossed the room in 3 strides and pinned the man's arm to the chair. The pistol clattered to the floor. "What is this?" Montgomery's voice rose. "How dare you?" "Quiet," Isaac said. His pistol pointed steady at the overseer, who had frozen mid-reach for his own weapon. Martha entered behind them, her eyes locked on Montgomery. "Where is she?" "Where is who?" Montgomery sputtered. "This is madness. Do you know what happens to slaves who—" Martha struck him across the face with the butt of her pistol. Blood sprayed from his split lip. "My daughter," Martha said. Each word came out cold and precise. "Sarah. You bought her 4 years ago. Where is she?" Understanding crossed Montgomery's face, then fear. There was fever. She didn't survive the first winter. Martha's hand shook. Her breathing came hard and fast. "You let my baby die." "She was property," Montgomery said. "I lost money on that purchase. If anything, you should—" He didn't finish. Martha's pistol fired. The sound deafened in the small room. Montgomery slumped in his chair, a red stain spreading across his chest. The overseer tried to run. Isaac shot him before he reached the door. Silence fell, broken only by rain against windows and Martha's ragged breathing. "The quarters," Isaac said quietly. "We tell the others." They found 6 people huddled in 2 small buildings behind the house. Frightened faces looked up as Isaac opened the door. He recognized some of them from harvest gatherings years ago. "Montgomery Harrow is dead," Isaac said. "His overseer, too. You're free to run. We're heading to the other Harrow properties tonight. You can come with us or scatter." Your choice. A woman holding a small child stood. You killed them? Yes. Good, she said. We'll scatter. Go different directions. Make it harder for anyone to track us all. Isaac nodded. Take what you need from the house. Food, clothes, blankets. Then burn it if you want. They left the six to make their own choices. The storm continued as they moved south toward Silas Harrow's property. The pattern repeated. Elias disabled horses. They entered through unlocked doors, found masters sleeping or drinking, never expecting danger in their own homes. Silas Harrow died in his bed. His overseer died trying to load a rifle. Thomas Harrow's breeding farm proved more difficult. 2 overseers lived on the property, but Jonas handled one while Isaac confronted the other. Thomas himself begged, offered money, offered freedom papers, offered anything. Isaac shot him anyway. At each property, they freed those enslaved, offered choices, watched people scatter into the night, carrying whatever they could grab. Some cried, some laughed, some just ran in silence. By the time they finished, the eastern sky had started to lighten. The storm was breaking. Rain fell lighter now. The thunder had moved west. They returned to the woods exhausted, their clothes soaked with rain and blood, their hands shaking from adrenaline and horror and something that might have been satisfaction. Isaac gathered their blood-stained coats and shirts. They buried them beneath a pile of leaves and branches, stripped down to undershirts despite the cold. The sun rose red through breaking clouds. Light touched the treetops. Isaac looked at his hands. They'd killed 7 men tonight. 7 human beings. The weight of that should have crushed him. Instead, he felt hollow, empty, but also unburdened. It's done, he said. Morning light filtered through Spanish moss hanging from ancient cypress trees. The group moved deeper into wilderness that felt older than memory itself. Behind them, smoke rose in thin columns where freed slaves had set fire to master houses, evidence of the night's work. Isaac led them east, away from roads and farms. Every step took them further from the world they knew. The forest grew denser. Underbrush grabbed at their legs. Thorns tore at skin already raw from the storm. "Where are we going?" Nate asked. He limped badly now. His ankle had twisted during their escape from Thomas Harrow's property. Each step made him wince. "Away," Isaac said. "That's all that matters right now." Elias moved to the front. "There's a place," he said quietly. Old Jacob used to talk about it before the overseers sold him south. A swamp network. Hidden communities deep in the wetlands where runaways build lives nobody can reach. "You know how to find it?" Martha asked. "No," Elias admitted. But Jacob said it was east of the Harrow lands, past the pine forests, where the ground turns to water. It wasn't much, but it was more than they had. They walked for hours. The sun climbed higher despite gray clouds that still lingered from the storm. Heat built beneath the canopy. Humidity pressed against their skin like a wet blanket. The forest changed around them. Pine gave way to hardwood. Hardwood gave way to cypress and tupelo. The ground grew softer. Water pooled in low places. Their feet sank into mud with each step. Jonas noticed Nate falling behind. The boy's face had gone pale. Sweat soaked his shirt, despite the relative coolness under the trees. "Give me your arm," Jonas said. "I can walk." "I know, but you don't have to." Jonas lifted Nate onto his back. The boy's weight barely registered. Years of fieldwork had built strength that didn't fade even after a sleepless night of killing and running. They moved through thickets that seemed designed to keep people out. Thorny vines created natural barriers. Dense palmetto fronds blocked sight lines. Water appeared in unexpected places. Shallow pools that looked like solid ground until someone stepped through. Martha fell once. Her leg plunged knee-deep into black water. Isaac pulled her out, checking for snakes or leeches. Found none. They kept moving. By midday, they were completely lost. The sun's position barely helped beneath such thick cover. Every direction looked the same: water, trees, hanging moss, shadows. "We should rest," Jonas said. "Find high ground." They discovered a small island of solid earth, maybe 20 feet across. Cypress roots created natural seats. They collapsed onto them, breathing hard. Nate examined his ankle. It had swollen to twice its normal size. Purple bruising spread across the skin. "Can you walk on it?" Isaac asked. "If I have to?" "You don't have to," Jonas said firmly. They shared the last of the bread Martha had grabbed from Montgomery Harrow's kitchen. Dry, hard, but food. They drank from a clear stream running between the trees. The water tasted of earth and vegetation but didn't make them sick. While they rested, Isaac thought about what they'd done. 7 dead men. An entire family line erased. He waited for guilt to arrive, for horror at their actions. It didn't come. Maybe it would, later. Maybe years from now he'd wake screaming. But right now, in this moment, he felt only the absence of chains. A sound made them freeze. Movement through the brush. Someone approaching their island. Isaac reached for his pistol. Jonas positioned himself in front of Nate and Martha. Elias gripped his knife. An elderly woman stepped into view. She moved through the swamp like she'd been born to it. Her dress was patched and faded but clean. Gray hair tied back beneath a faded headscarf. Dark eyes that took in everything with one sweeping glance. "You're loud," she said. "Heard you splashing half a mile back." Isaac kept the pistol ready but pointed down. "We mean no harm." "I know what you mean," the woman said. "Same thing everyone who comes this deep means. You're running. Question is whether you're smart enough to survive it." "We're looking for a place called Stillwater Hollow," Elias said. The woman's expression didn't change. "What makes you think there's such a place?" "A man named Jacob told me. Years ago, before they sold him. Jacob Weems. I don't know his last name. Big man, missing 2 fingers on his left hand." Elias nodded. "That's him." The woman studied them for a long moment. Her gaze lingered on Nate's swollen ankle, on Martha's exhausted face, on Jonas's protective stance. Finally, on Isaac's pistol. "You kill someone to get that weapon?" she asked. Isaac met her eyes. "Several someones." "Good," she said. "Anyone who makes it this far without blood on their hands isn't desperate enough to keep running. I'm Ruth Palmer, and if you can keep up, I'll take you to the Hollow. But you slow me down, I leave you behind. Understood?" "Understood," Isaac said. Ruth moved back into the swamp. They followed. She set a brutal pace despite her age, moved through water and mud like it was solid ground, knew exactly where to step, which roots to grab, which channels to avoid. Jonas carried Nate without complaint. Martha kept pace through pure determination. Elias marked their trail mentally, learning the route. Isaac brought up the rear, watching for pursuit that didn't come. The sun began its descent. Golden light slanted through the canopy. Shadows deepened. Ruth led them to a channel of dark water, maybe 15 feet across. A hidden path of stepping stones stretched across it, barely visible beneath the surface. "Follow exactly where I step," Ruth said. "One wrong placement, and you're chest deep in mud that doesn't let go." They crossed carefully. On the far side, the landscape shifted. The trees grew in deliberate patterns. Someone had shaped this place, guided its growth. Buildings emerged from the shadows. Not houses exactly, more like structures built into the natural landscape. Raised platforms, walls of woven branches and moss, roofs of palm fronds so carefully constructed they looked like part of the forest itself. People appeared. Men and women and children, all black, all watching the newcomers with cautious eyes. A man stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, with gray threading through his beard. Authority radiated from him despite simple clothes. "Ruth," he said. "Who've you brought us?" "Runners," Ruth said. "Fresh ones. still bleeding from whatever they left behind. The man studied them. His gaze was heavy but not unkind. "I'm Samuel Dorsey. This is Stillwater Hollow. We've built something here. Something that works because we stay hidden, because we stay quiet. Because we remember that survival isn't about fighting. It's about disappearing so completely that no one thinks to look." "We understand," Isaac said. "Do you?" Samuel asked. "Because whatever you did out there, it's going to bring attention. And attention gets people killed." "We have nowhere else to go," Martha said softly. Samuel sighed. He looked at Nate's injured ankle, at their exhausted faces, at the desperation they carried like a visible weight. "You can stay," he said finally, "but you follow our rules. You live quiet. You work. You become part of this place or you leave. No middle ground." "We'll follow your rules," Isaac said. Samuel nodded to Ruth, who led them deeper into the settlement. Lanterns began to glow as darkness fell. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere nearby. The smell of cooking food drifted through the air. They were given a small platform structure to share. Clean water. A meal of fish and greens. Blankets that didn't smell like masters' houses. As night settled completely over the hollow, Martha stood at the edge of their platform. She watched children play near the lanterns, a game with sticks and a ball made of wrapped cloth. Their laughter was pure, unscarred. Isaac came to stand beside her. For the first time in days, his shoulders relaxed slightly. "Maybe we've found a place," he whispered. Morning arrived in Stillwater Hollow with sounds Isaac had never associated with freedom. Bird calls, children laughing, the soft rhythm of work done by choice rather than command. He woke on the platform they'd been given, body stiff from sleeping on wooden planks. But it was their wooden platform. No overseer would come kicking at the door. No bell would summon them to fields they didn't own. Martha was already awake. She sat at the edge of their shelter, watching the settlement come to life in the early light. Her expression was distant, thoughtful. "You sleep at all?" Isaac asked. "A little," she said. "Kept waiting for someone to tell me it wasn't real." Jonas stirred nearby, his massive frame somehow folded into too small a space. Elias was already gone. Isaac could see him near the main walkway, examining the construction with a carpenter's critical eye. Nate still slept, his injured ankle propped on a folded blanket Ruth had provided the night before. The swelling looked marginally better. Samuel Dorsey appeared as the sun cleared the trees. He moved through the hollow like a shepherd among his flock, checking on families, offering quiet words of guidance. He stopped at their platform. "Morning," Samuel said. "You ready to work?" "Yes," Isaac said. "Good. Because nobody eats who doesn't contribute. That's how we survive." Samuel assigned them tasks based on what they could do. Isaac and Elias would help fortify the walkways that connected different parts of the settlement. Jonas would assist in building stronger shelter walls for the coming winter. Martha could volunteer at the cooking station if she wished. "What about the boy?" Samuel asked, nodding toward Nate. "He needs rest," Isaac said. "Ruth will see to him. She's got more healing knowledge in one finger than most doctors have in their whole bodies." They split up to begin their work. Isaac followed Samuel and Elias to the network of walkways that crisscrossed the wetter parts of the hollow. Some were simple logs laid across mud. Others were more elaborate, raised platforms connected by planks, creating paths above standing water. "We rebuild these every few months," Samuel explained. "Wood rots fast in this environment, but it's worth it. These walkways let us move through areas that would trap horses. If militia ever found us, they couldn't follow on horseback. They'd have to come on foot through water and mud." Elias examined the construction closely. "You could make these stronger. Use different woods for different sections. Cypress for the water-submerged parts. It resists rot better. Pine for the elevated sections where weight distribution matters more." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "You know your wood." "I was a carpenter." Before I was property. You still are a carpenter, Samuel said firmly. Out here, you're whatever skills you bring. Nothing else. They worked through the morning. Isaac learned how to select proper logs, how to notch them so they locked together without nails, how to test weight distribution before trusting a walkway with lives. Jonas worked on the far side of the settlement, with a crew building new shelter walls. His strength made light work of lifting beams other men struggled with, but he moved carefully, asking before acting, deferring to those who knew the techniques. A woman named Sarah showed him how to weave branches into panels that would shed rain while allowing air flow. You want the walls to breathe, she explained. Solid walls trap moisture. Moisture breeds sickness. Jonas absorbed everything. He'd spent his life being told what to do, but rarely shown why. Here, people taught. They explained. They treated him like someone capable of learning. Martha found her way to the cooking station where several women prepared the midday meal. They worked over fire pits carefully designed to disperse smoke through the canopy rather than rising in visible columns. An older woman named Grace handed Martha a knife and a pile of wild onions. You know how to dice? Yes, ma'am. Then dice. And stop calling me ma'am. We don't use those words here. Martha worked alongside the other women. They talked while they cooked, shared stories, laughed at small jokes. It was ordinary, simple, exactly what Martha had been denied for so long. She found herself humming while she worked, an old song her own mother had taught her before they were separated. The tune came back like muscle memory. Grace smiled. You've got a voice. We sing sometimes in the evenings. You should join. Maybe, Martha said softly. Back at Ruth's shelter, Nate received treatment for his ankle. Ruth had ground herbs into a paste that smelled sharp and medicinal. She applied it carefully, wrapping the ankle in clean cloth. This'll draw the swelling down, Ruth said. But you stay off it for 3 days. No arguments. I can work. You can rest. That's your work right now. Ruth's voice was stern but not unkind. You survived whatever hell brought you here. Don't waste that survival by being stupid about healing. Nate settled back onto his pallet, frustrated but obedient. That afternoon, Samuel gathered Isaac, Elias, and Jonas to explain the hollow's security. He led them to the settlement's perimeter. We stay hidden through layers, Samuel said. First layer is distance. We're deep enough in the swamp that casual travelers never come near. Second layer is traps. He showed them carefully concealed pits covered with branches and leaves, tripwires connected to bells made from tin cans, false trails that led to dead ends or dangerous sinkholes. Third layer is illusion, Samuel continued. We make our structures look like natural landscape. We scatter our fires so smoke disperses. We train the children to go silent when they hear the warning signal. What's the warning signal? Isaac asked. Samuel demonstrated a specific bird call. 3 short notes followed by 2 long. You hear that? You get to shelter and stay quiet until you hear the all clear. Has it ever been tested? Elias asked. Twice. Both times, hunters passed through looking for game. Never knew we were here. Isaac studied the defensive measures. They were clever, effective, but they were designed for hiding, not fighting. What if hiding isn't enough? He asked. Samuel's expression hardened. Then we scatter into the deep swamp and regroup later. We don't fight. Fighting means dying. We survive by being ghosts. Isaac nodded but didn't argue. He understood Samuel's logic, appreciated it even. But Isaac also knew that sometimes ghosts got found. And when they did, being able to fight was the difference between surviving and disappearing forever. That evening, the hollow settled into its nightly routine. Families gathered for meals. Children played until darkness made it too difficult. Lanterns glowed softly, their light carefully shaded. Isaac was helping Elias secure a section of walkway when movement near the settlement's entrance drew his attention. A figure emerged from the trees hands raised in a gesture of peace. The man was tall and thin, dressed in dark clothing that might have once been fine but was now mud-stained and torn. He wore a collar that suggested religious profession. His face was gaunt, desperate. Samuel approached him cautiously. "State your business." "I seek refuge, brother," the man said. His voice was smooth despite his ragged appearance, practiced. "My name is Reverend Callum Price. I fled a plantation militia 3 days ago. They discovered I was teaching enslaved people to read. I've been running ever since." Samuel studied him carefully. "You alone?" "Yes. I had companions, but—" Callum's voice broke convincingly. "They didn't make it." Several Hollow residents gathered, watching the exchange. There was sympathy in some faces, suspicion in others. "We don't turn away those who need help," Samuel said finally. "But we also don't tolerate threats to this community. You understand?" "Of course. I seek only safety and the chance to serve however I can." Samuel nodded. "Ruth, get him water and food. We'll give him shelter for the night. Tomorrow, we'll talk more." Callum was led to a small hut on the settlement's edge. Ruth brought him a meal. Others offered blankets. Isaac watched from the shadows near their platform. Something about Callum didn't settle right. The man's desperation seemed genuine. His exhaustion appeared real. But there was something in how his eyes moved, how they tracked the settlement's layout, how they counted people. Callum clutched a leather satchel tightly as he entered the hut. He didn't set it down even when accepting food, kept it close like it contained something precious. Martha came to stand beside Isaac. "You see him?" "I saw. You believe his story?" Isaac thought about Overseer Cray, tracking them through the woods, about how betrayal often wore friendly faces, about how survival meant questioning everything, even kindness. "I don't know yet," Isaac said quietly, "but I'm going to watch him." The Hollow woke to birdsong and the soft sounds of people stirring. Morning mist hung low over the water, turning the settlement into something that looked almost dreamlike in the pale dawn light. Isaac had barely slept. He'd spent most of the night watching Callum's hut from a distance, but the preacher hadn't emerged. No suspicious movement, no signals. Just the quiet breathing of a man who seemed genuinely exhausted. Maybe Isaac was being paranoid. Maybe Callum was exactly what he claimed to be. Another soul fleeing the same cruelty they'd escaped. But Isaac's instincts had kept him alive this long. He couldn't afford to ignore them now. The community gathered for breakfast near the main cooking station. Grace and her helpers had prepared a simple meal of cornmeal porridge sweetened with wild honey. People collected their portions in wooden bowls, settling onto logs and platforms to eat together. Callum emerged from his hut, looking somewhat restored. He'd washed his face, combed his hair. The desperate wildness from the previous night had smoothed into something more composed. Samuel waved him over. "Come, Reverend, join us." Callum accepted a bowl with apparent gratitude. "Bless you all. This community is a miracle, a true sanctuary in a wilderness of suffering." He ate slowly, his eyes moving across the gathered faces, taking in details, counting again. Martha sat with Isaac and Elias, watching Callum from across the gathering. Something in her posture had tightened. "You hear what's happening beyond the swamp?" Callum asked between bites. His voice carried easily across the group. "The militias are in a fury. They're searching for 5 dangerous runaways. Killers, they're calling them. Said they murdered plantation owners in cold blood." Several people shifted uncomfortably. News from outside always brought tension. "They're offering substantial rewards," Callum continued. $200 per person, dead or alive." He shook his head sadly. "The violence those runaways committed has made things harder for everyone. Militias are stopping any black person they see on the roads now. Free or not." Martha's hand tightened on her bowl. "How do you know so much about it?" Callum turned to her with a gentle smile. "I passed through 3 towns on my way here. People talk. especially when they're scared. What else did they say? Isaac asked carefully. They say the runaways hit multiple Harrow properties in one night. Killed masters, overseers, even some house servants who got in the way. Callum's voice took on a preacher's cadence. They say it was orchestrated, planned. Not the desperate act of scared people, but something calculated. Isaac felt ice form in his stomach. Callum's description was too accurate, too specific. How would anyone know it was planned? Elias asked quietly. The militia found evidence, letters, documents, proof that someone inside the Harrow network had been gathering information for months. Callum looked directly at Isaac as he spoke. They say the leader was a houseworker, someone who could read, someone who understood how the Harrow family's holdings connected. The lie was smooth, convincing, mixed just enough truth with fiction to sound believable. But Martha caught something. You said they killed house servants. How would you know that detail? The killings only happened 4 nights ago. News doesn't travel that fast, especially not specific details like who died inside which house. Callum's smile didn't waver, but something in his eyes flickered. The militia captain I encountered was quite vocal, angry. He gave many details. Which plantation were you fleeing from? Martha pressed. Blackwood Estate, north of here. Never heard of it. It's small, owned by a man named Terence Webb. Martha glanced at Isaac. The Harrow Ledger hadn't mentioned any Webb, and Martha had spent years hearing gossip from visiting house slaves. She knew every plantation name within 50 miles. Callum was lying. The breakfast gathering dispersed as people returned to their work. Isaac pulled Martha and Elias aside. He knows too much, Martha whispered. Could be coincidence, Elias offered, but he didn't sound convinced. We watch him, Isaac said. Close. Nate, still limping but stubborn, volunteered to help with light tasks despite Ruth's protests. His ankle was better but not healed. The wrapped support let him walk, though each step brought a grimace. That afternoon, Nate was helping carry water from a nearby spring when he noticed Callum walking toward the settlement's eastern edge. The preacher moved casually, as if simply exploring. But his path was deliberate. Nate followed at a distance, using his smaller size to stay hidden among the trees and brush. His ankle throbbed, but he ignored it. Callum reached a small clearing about 300 yards from the hollow's center. He looked around carefully, then knelt beside his leather satchel. From inside, he pulled a metal tube, brass, maybe 6 inches long. One end had a small cap. Nate crouched behind a fallen log, watching. Callum removed the cap and spoke into the tube. His voice was too quiet for Nate to hear words, but the tone was clear, businesslike, reporting. Then Callum did something that made Nate's blood freeze. He pointed the open end of the tube eastward and covered it with his hand 3 times. Wait. Then, twice. More. A signal. Callum replaced the cap, returned the tube to his satchel, and stood. He brushed dirt from his knees and walked back toward the settlement, whistling softly. Nate waited until Callum was out of sight, then ran. His ankle screamed with each impact, but he didn't slow. He burst into the central area where Isaac was working with Samuel. Isaac! Nate's voice was urgent. He's signaling someone. Callum. He's got a metal tube. He was. Gunfire cracked through the swamp. The first bullet splintered a tree trunk 3 feet from Isaac's head. The second hit Grace's cooking pot, sending it spinning. People screamed. Children scattered. Torches appeared through the trees on the eastern side. Dozens of them. Moving fast. Militia! Samuel shouted. Warning signal! Now! Someone gave the bird call. 3 short notes. Too long. It was too late for hiding. Men on horseback crashed through the shallow water. Others came on foot, spreading out to surround the settlement. They wore no uniforms but carried weapons with the confidence of sanctioned violence. Isaac saw Callum standing near his hut, watching the chaos with calm satisfaction. Run! Isaac grabbed Nate and pushed him toward the western trails. Go! Martha was already moving, pulling children toward escape routes. Elias helped Ruth gather medical supplies. Jonas appeared from the far side of the settlement, carrying 2 small children. He set them down near their mother, then turned back to help others. "Jonas! No!" Martha screamed. "Come with us!" But Jonas was already lifting another child, sheltering her with his body as militiamen closed in. A rider cut off Jonas's path. 2 more surrounded him. Jonas set the child down gently, then straightened to his full height. "Run, little one," he said softly. The child fled. Jonas faced the riders without fear. They dragged him down with ropes, 3 men to hold him. Jonas didn't fight. Fighting would give them excuse to kill everyone. Fire spread across the settlement. Torches touched dry wood. Shelters that had taken months to build burned in minutes. Isaac, Martha, Elias, and Nate ran through smoke and chaos. A bullet grazed Nate's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Martha caught him, kept him moving. They plunged into the dense swamp growth beyond the hollow's western edge. Behind them, screams mixed with crackling flames and triumphant shouts. They ran until the sounds faded, until their lungs burned, until they found a thicket so dense the smoke couldn't penetrate. They collapsed inside it, gasping, bleeding, destroyed. Through gaps in the foliage, they could see the sky glowing orange. The hollow burned like a beacon in the darkness. Isaac's hands shook, not from fear, from rage so pure it felt like poison. Martha pressed cloth against Nate's bleeding shoulder. Elias stared at the flames, his face empty of expression. Isaac spoke in a whisper that cut like broken glass. "Callum sold us out." The militia moved through the smoldering ruins like scavengers picking at bones. Their torches cast dancing shadows across broken shelters and scattered belongings. Isaac watched from the thicket, counting men, memorizing faces. 12 riders, he whispered. Maybe 8 on foot. Martha kept pressure on Nate's shoulder. The bullet had torn through skin and muscle but missed bone. The bleeding had slowed, but Nate's face was pale. "They're looking for bodies," Elias said quietly, "counting the dead." One militiaman kicked through ashes, turning over burned posts with his boot. Another searched through what remained of the communal cooking area. They moved with casual brutality, laughing occasionally at some private joke. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 minutes, a man on horseback raised his hand. "Nothing here but ash and nigger bones," he called out. "Let's move. They'll be miles away by now." The militia gathered their torches and horses. They moved northeast, back toward the main roads. Their voices faded into the swamp sounds. Isaac waited until the last torch disappeared before moving. "Give it 10 more minutes. Make sure they're really gone." They counted seconds in silence. Nate's breathing was shallow but steady. Martha had torn strips from her dress to bind his wound properly. Finally, Isaac stood. "Stay low. Stay quiet." They emerged from the thicket and approached what was left of Stillwater Hollow. The devastation was total. Shelters that had housed families were now skeletal frames. The communal garden was trampled into mud. Children's toys lay scattered among the ashes. Martha's hand went to her mouth. Oh, God! Bodies lay where they had fallen. Not many. Most people had escaped into the swamp. But enough. An elderly man Isaac had shared breakfast with yesterday. A young woman who had helped Martha at the cooking station. Samuel Dorsey lay face down near the central fire pit, a bullet hole in his back. Samuel tried to hold them off, Elias said softly. Gave others time to run. They moved carefully through the ruins, checking for survivors. The smoke still hung thick in the air, making their eyes water. "Here!" Martha's voice came from behind a collapsed shelter. "Someone's alive!" They rushed over. Old Ruth lay trapped under a fallen support beam, her leg twisted at an ugly angle, but her eyes were open and alert. "Don't!" "Don't try moving that beam," Ruth gasped. "My leg's broken bad, but I can breathe." Elias examined the beam carefully. "If we lift it straight up, it won't cause more damage." Together, Isaac and Elias raised the heavy wood, while Martha pulled Ruth free. The old woman hissed in pain but didn't cry out. "Jonas?" Ruth asked immediately. "The big man. Did he make it?" Isaac's jaw tightened. "We don't know. We saw militia take him down. They got him alive," Ruth said. "I heard them talking. Said they wanted one alive to make an example. They're taking him to a barn near the county courthouse. Plan to hang him publicly in 3 days." The words hit like physical blows. 3 days. Not much time. "Did you hear anything else?" Isaac asked. Ruth nodded, wincing as Martha examined her leg. "The militia captain was here. Man named Douglas Mercer. He was bragging. Said once they hang Jonas, they'll use him as proof that escaped slaves are murderers. Use it to justify new laws, harsher patrols. They want other enslaved people too scared to even think about running." Isaac's hands formed fists. "Where exactly is this barn?" "Edge of Coopersville, about 15 miles northeast. It's where they hold prisoners before trial." Ruth looked up at Isaac with sharp eyes. "You're thinking of going after him. We're not leaving Jonas to hang. They'll be expecting you. Mercer isn't stupid. He knows Jonas has friends. Then we'll have to be smarter than him." Martha finished binding Ruth's leg with strips of cloth and a makeshift splint from broken wood. "Can you stay hidden here? We'll come back for you." Ruth managed a thin smile. "Child, I've survived worse than a broken leg. I'll find a safe spot in the deep swamp. You go get that gentle giant back." Elias had already started gathering supplies from the ruins. He found rope that hadn't fully burned, a broken axe handle that could serve as a club, pieces of metal that could be sharpened or shaped. "We'll need weapons," he said. "Real ones. What we have isn't enough." Isaac thought about the courthouse barn. If they're holding Jonas there, they'll have guards, which means they'll have guns. "You want to take their weapons," Elias said. "I want to do more than that." Isaac's voice carried a cold edge. "Ruth said the militia captain was here. Mercer. If he's the one organizing the patrols and executions, then he's the one we need to stop." Martha helped Ruth toward the swamp's deeper sections, where the old woman could hide safely. When she returned, her face was set with grim determination. "Jonas protected those children," Martha said. "Put himself between them and the guns. I'm not letting him die for that." Nate struggled to sit up, despite his wounded shoulder. "I can walk. I can help." "You'll slow us down," Isaac said, but not unkindly. "And if things go wrong, we need someone who can tell Ruth what happened. I didn't run this far to hide while Jonas hangs." Isaac studied the young man. Nate's jaw was set with stubborn courage. His shoulder bled through the bandages, but his eyes were clear. "Then you carry supplies," Isaac decided. "Nothing heavy. And if we tell you to run, you run. Understood?" Nate nodded. Elias distributed what he'd salvaged. The rope went to Isaac, the axe handle to Martha, a piece of sharpened metal, crude but lethal, to himself. Nate carried a small sack with the few supplies that hadn't burned: dried meat, a water skin, cloth for bandages. They stood at the edge of the ruined settlement as night deepened around them. The moon was rising, giving just enough light to navigate by. Isaac looked at each of them. Martha, who had already lost a child to this system. Elias, whose hands had built instruments of torture before learning to build tools of survival. Nate, barely more than a boy, but carrying scars that proved he'd already lived a lifetime. And Jonas, somewhere in a barn, waiting for a rope. "We move through the forest," Isaac said. "Stay off the roads. Mercer will have patrols looking for survivors. We stay quiet, stay hidden, and we don't stop until we reach Coopersville." They began walking, stepping over charred remains of what had briefly been their hope. The settlement that had offered them sanctuary for mere days now lay in ruins behind them. Isaac led them northeast, using the stars for guidance. The forest was thick here, the undergrowth difficult. But the difficulty meant safety from patrols on horseback. They walked in single file. Isaac first, then Martha, then Nate, with Elias bringing up the rear. They moved with practiced silence, avoiding dry branches and loose stones. The night deepened around them. Somewhere ahead, Jonas waited in chains. Somewhere behind them, the ashes of Stillwater Hollow cooled in the darkness. And somewhere in Isaac's chest, something harder than hope and sharper than rage had taken root. They had come too far to surrender now. The county courthouse barn sat at the edge of Coopersville like a rotting tooth. 2 stories of weathered wood and iron bars, surrounded by a fence of sharpened stakes. Lanterns hung from posts at each corner, casting pools of yellow light that the group would need to avoid. Isaac counted guards from their position in the tree line. 6 men visible, probably more inside. They had arrived after hours of hard travel through the forest. Nate's shoulder had bled through his bandages twice, requiring Martha to stop and rebind the wound. But the young man hadn't complained once. Now they crouched behind a fallen log, watching the barn. Guards patrolled in pairs, rifles slung over their shoulders. They moved with casual confidence, men who expected no trouble. There, Elias pointed to the rear of the barn. That back door has a chain lock. I can work with that. Martha studied the supply sheds positioned 50 yards from the barn's main entrance. Those sheds will burn fast. Wood's dry. They'll pull guards to deal with it. Isaac's eyes tracked to a smaller building beside the barn. Light showed through cracks in its walls. Voices drifted across the distance. One voice in particular made Isaac's hands tighten into fists. Reverend Callum. The man's smooth, practiced tones carried through the night air. The Lord works in mysterious ways, Captain Mercer. These runaways thought they could hide from divine justice, but righteousness always prevails. Long as the reward money prevails with it, Mercer's rougher voice responded. You'll get your cut once we hang the big one. Isaac forced himself to breathe slowly. Focus on the plan. Let rage become fuel, not wildfire. Nate, he said quietly, you see that window? 2nd floor, west side? Nate followed Isaac's gaze. A barred window, small but not impossible to reach. I see it. That's where they're holding Jonas. You get to that window. Let him know we're here. Keep him ready to move when Elias breaks the lock. My shoulder. I know it hurts. Can you do it? Nate's jaw set with determination. Yes. Isaac turned to Martha. You're sure about the fires? Martha pulled out the flint and steel they'd salvaged from Stillwater Hollow's ruins. I've watched masters burn our homes for years. About time we return the favor. Once those fires start, we have maybe 5 minutes before the whole barn goes up. We get Jonas, and we run. No heroics, no delays. Elias checked the crude lockpicks he'd fashioned from metal scraps. What about you? I'm going to have a conversation with the good Reverend. They moved into position. Elias circled wide through the darkness, staying beyond the lantern light's reach. Martha crept toward the supply sheds, her movements barely disturbing the grass. Nate limped through shadows, favoring his wounded shoulder, heading for the barn's blind side. Isaac walked straight toward the building where Callum's voice continued its sanctimonious drone. He didn't hide. He didn't creep. He walked like a man who belonged there. A guard noticed him 30 feet from the door. Hey, you there, stop! Isaac stopped, raised his hands. Let the guard approach. Who the hell are you? The guard's rifle came up. How'd you get past the... Isaac moved faster than the man expected, grabbed the rifle barrel. Twisted. The guard stumbled forward, and Isaac's elbow caught him across the temple. The man dropped without a sound. Isaac caught the rifle before it clattered. Checked the chamber. Loaded. He kicked open the door. Inside, Captain Mercer sat at a desk covered with maps and bounty notices. Reverend Callum stood beside him, counting coins into neat stacks. Both men looked up in shock. "Evening, Reverend," Isaac said, leveling the rifle at them. "Remember me?" Callum's face went pale beneath his false piety. You shouldn't be here. The guards are about to be very busy." Isaac's voice was cold as winter iron. "Captain, you're going to sit very still. Move, and I shoot the good Reverend first." Mercer's hand had been sliding toward a pistol on his desk. He froze. "You're making a mistake, boy." "That word?" Isaac's finger tightened on the trigger. "I'm not your boy. Never was. Never will be." Callum backed toward the wall, hands raised. "Brother Isaac, please, we can discuss this. I only did what I had to survive. You understand survival, don't you? I understand selling your own people for silver." Isaac stepped closer. "How many, Callum? How many runaways did you betray?" I kept records. Good records. The Lord values 30 pieces of silver." Isaac's voice cracked like a whip. "You stood in that barn and preached about mercy, about sanctuary, and you sold us out the same night." Callum's mask of righteousness slipped. His eyes went hard and calculating. "You think you're the first to run? You think you're special? This system is bigger than you, bigger than all of us. I learned to profit from it instead of dying under it. Children died in those fires. That's on you, not me. You're the ones who killed the Harrow Masters. I just collected the reward for finding murderers." Outside, a shout went up. Then another. Orange light flickered through the window. Martha's fires had begun. Mercer lunged for his pistol. Isaac swung the rifle, catching the captain across the face. Bone crunched. Mercer went down hard, blood streaming from his shattered nose. Callum bolted for the back door. Isaac let him take 3 steps before shooting. The bullet caught Callum in the leg. The Reverend screamed and collapsed. Isaac walked over slowly. Callum writhed on the floor, clutching his bleeding thigh. Please, I can help you. I know routes, safe houses. You know how to save yourself." Isaac stood over him. "That's all you've ever known. Everyone does what they must to survive." "No." Isaac's voice went quiet, certain. "Some of us do what we must to live. There's a difference." He raised the rifle. Callum's eyes went wide. Wait, I can—" Isaac pulled the trigger. The shot echoed in the small room. Callum jerked once, then went still. Blood pooled beneath him, mixing with the scattered silver coins. Isaac looked down at the body, felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, just grim necessity. Captain Mercer groaned on the floor, semi-conscious. Isaac took the man's pistol and ammunition, then grabbed the bounty notices from the desk. He stuffed them inside his shirt. Outside, chaos had erupted. The supply sheds burned hot and fast, exactly as Martha predicted. Guards ran toward the flames with buckets. Horses whinnied in panic. Orders were shouted in confusion. Isaac emerged from the building to find Elias already at the barn's rear entrance. The lockpicks worked quickly. The chain fell away. "Jonas!" Elias yanked the door open. The big man stumbled out, hands still bound, face bruised but eyes alert. Nate appeared from the shadows, having scrambled down from the window. Martha ran up, her dress singed from the fires. "We need to go. The whole place is about to—" An explosion rocked the night. One of the supply sheds, probably holding gunpowder, erupted in a ball of flame. The blast wave knocked guards off their feet. "Run!" Isaac shouted. They ran, through back alleys, between buildings. The town behind them lit up like a torch. More explosions followed as the fires spread. People poured into the streets in confusion and panic. The group didn't stop. They ran until buildings gave way to fields, fields to forest, forest to the river. At the riverbank, they finally collapsed, chests heaving. muscles screaming. But alive. Jonas sat heavily on a fallen log, coughing smoke from his lungs. Elias cut the ropes binding his wrists. Martha checked everyone for injuries. Nate's shoulder still bled, but the wound hadn't worsened. Isaac stood at the water's edge, watching the orange glow on the horizon that marked Coopersville burning. Jonas coughed again, cleared his throat. Where now? Isaac turned to face them. His clothes were covered in ash and blood. His eyes held the weight of everything they'd done, everything they'd become. Somewhere they can't follow. Early dawn light filtered through the pines, turning the forest floor silver. The group moved north, following the river until it narrowed into a creek, then smaller still into mountain streams that cut through rock. Isaac supported Nate on one side. The boy's shoulder wound had stopped bleeding, but every step brought a wince. Nate didn't complain. He'd stopped complaining hours ago. Jonas pushed forward despite exhaustion that made his legs shake. Weeks of captivity, beatings, and starvation had weakened even his considerable strength. But he walked. Each step took them farther from the burning courthouse and everything that wanted them dead. Martha led the way, clutching directions old Ruth had pressed into her hands before they fled. Follow the creek north until you see 3 birch trees growing from one trunk. Turn east. Climb until you can't climb any more. When you think you've gone too far, go farther still. The old woman's words echoed in Martha's mind with each mile. She'd memorized every detail, afraid to forget even one landmark that might lead them astray. Elias brought up the rear, watching their trail, erasing footprints where possible, breaking branches to confuse trackers. The skills he'd learned from years of careful observation now served a new purpose, protecting instead of serving. The sun climbed higher. The forest changed. Pines gave way to hardwoods. The air grew cooler as elevation increased. Their breath came harder, lungs working against the thinning atmosphere. Nate stumbled. Isaac caught him before he fell. "I'm sorry," Nate gasped. "I'm slowing us down." "You're doing fine." Isaac adjusted his grip. "Just keep moving." "How much farther?" "As far as it takes." They climbed. The terrain grew rougher. Rocky outcroppings replaced soft earth. Tree roots twisted across the path like ancient fingers reaching through time. Jonas paused at a steep section, breathing hard. His hands gripped a boulder for support. Sweat ran down his face, despite the mountain chill. Martha touched his arm. "Rest a moment." "No time for rest. There's always time to breathe." He met her eyes, nodded. They sat together on sun-warmed stone while the others caught up. Elias studied the landscape. The trees here grew different, older, thicker, with bark scarred by decades of weather. "This place doesn't see many people." "Good," Martha said softly. "Maybe it won't see the ones hunting us." By midday, they reached a natural plateau. The forest opened into a clearing where 3 massive birch trees grew from a single twisted trunk, exactly as old Ruth described. "East," Martha said, pointing. The path became less a path and more a suggestion. They climbed through underbrush, over fallen logs, around boulders too large to have been placed by human hands. The mountain tested them with every step. Nate's breathing grew labored. Isaac felt the boy's weight increase as strength failed. "Almost there," Isaac lied, not knowing if it was true. Then Jonas stopped, pointed upward. "Look." Through the trees, barely visible, smoke rose in thin ribbons. Not wildfire smoke, controlled, deliberate, cooking smoke. They climbed faster now, hope driving exhausted muscles. The trees thinned. The path widened into something deliberately maintained. And then the forest opened completely. Cedar Ridge. The settlement sprawled across a mountain shelf, protected on 3 sides by sheer rock faces. Dozens of structures dotted the clearing. Homes built from logs and stone, gardens bursting with late summer vegetables. Smoke houses curing meat. Children playing near a central well. People moved through the settlement with purpose and calm. Black families worked alongside Native people, creating something that belonged to neither world and both at once. A woman spotted them first. She called out, not in alarm, but announcement. Others appeared. Within moments, a delegation approached. 3 men, 2 women, all watching the newcomers with cautious eyes. The oldest man stepped forward. His hair had gone white, but his shoulders stayed straight. "You're far from anywhere." "We're far from everywhere," Isaac replied. "Looking for Cedar Ridge." "Who told you about Cedar Ridge?" "Old Ruth Palmer, from Stillwater Hollow." Recognition flickered across several faces. The old man nodded slowly. "Ruth's vouching means something, but we got to hear your story before we let you stay," they told it. Not the sanitized version, not the version that made them heroes. The true version: escape, violence, pursuit, betrayal, more violence, and now flight. The council listened without interruption. Their faces showed neither judgment nor approval, only careful attention. When Isaac finished, silence stretched across the clearing. Children had stopped playing to watch. Families paused their work. Finally, the old man spoke. "I'm Samuel Dorsey, same as the man who led Stillwater before the militia burned it." He saw their expressions shift. "Ruth got word to us before she went underground. She told us you might come." "Will you take us?" Martha asked. "We have skills. We can work. We won't be burdens." Samuel studied each of them in turn. Every person here ran from something. Some from bondage, some from broken treaties, some from wars they didn't start. "We built Cedar Ridge on one simple rule: no masters, no overseers, no chains. You carry that rule in your hearts. You're welcome here." Isaac felt something crack inside his chest. Not breaking, opening. "We do." "Then welcome home." The settlement moved to embrace them. Families offered food, water, and medicine. A healer examined Nate's shoulder and Jonas's injuries. Questions came gently, respectfully, as people learned their names and offered their own in return. Isaac became strategist for community defenses, sharing everything he'd learned about planning, watching, anticipating threats before they arrived. Martha found herself surrounded by children eager to learn, and she discovered joy in teaching letters and numbers to young minds free to use them. Jonas took to farming with quiet determination, finally building something with his hands instead of destroying under orders. Elias established a workshop where he crafted tools and structures that served life instead of punishment. Nate, once healed, became apprentice scout, learning the mountain paths and hidden trails that kept Cedar Ridge invisible to the world below. Days became weeks. Weeks became the rhythm of a life none of them had imagined possible. One evening, as sunset painted the western sky in shades of gold and crimson, Isaac stood atop the ridge that gave the settlement its name. The valley spread below, vast and untamed, belonging to no one and everyone at once. Martha appeared beside him, then Jonas, Elias, Nate, shoulder healing but still stiff. They stood together, watching light fade from the world. The wind moved through the pines, carrying the scent of cooking fires and growing things. No bells rang to mark forced labor, no whips cracked, no voices shouted orders backed by violence. Isaac breathed deep, released it slowly, felt the weight of everything they'd done, everything they'd survived, everything they'd become settle into something resembling peace. "No one owns us now," he said softly. The words hung in the air between them. Truth, promise, beginning. Below, Cedar Ridge glowed with lamplight as families gathered for evening meals. Children's laughter drifted upward. Somewhere, someone sang. The 5 stood together watching darkness claim the valley, knowing they'd finally found what they'd been running toward all along. Not freedom from, but freedom to build. to rest, to simply be. The stars emerged one by one, ancient and indifferent. But here, on this mountain, beneath this sky, 5 people who'd been forced to become something terrible in order to survive could finally begin learning how to be human. Again, human, whole, and finally, impossibly free. I hope you found that story powerful. Leave a like on the video and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. I have handpicked 2 stories for you that are even more powerful. Have a great day.